Welcome to Navigating Advocacy, the true crime podcast that goes beyond storytelling to ignite change and seek justice. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney. As true crime enthusiasts turned passionate advocates, we've seen the power of storytelling raise awareness about unsolved crimes and bring hope to victims and their families. We hope to inspire action and promote positive change within the true crime community.
Our mission is simple. We provide a platform for victims and their families to share their stories, to be heard, and find solidarity. But we don't stop there. We offer practical guidance to our listeners on how they can actively make a difference in their own communities.
In each episode, we'll discuss a different unsolved case. We'll examine the details, highlight potential leads, and strive to spark new interests that may help advance the investigation. Our goal is to reignite hope and ultimately bring justice where it's long overdue.
But this podcast is about more than just a conversation. It's about building a community of like-minded individuals who share a common purpose, making a real difference in the fight for justice. Whether you're a seasoned true crime fan or new to the genre, we invite you to join us on this journey of discovery and advocacy.
Together, we can create a wave of change. We're here to empower you to also become advocates for change, no matter where or who you are. We are Navigating Advocacy.
We discuss topics that may be sensitive to listeners. Discretion is advised. This quarter's action-oriented advocacy technically takes place in 2 states. We traveled to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because under initial research, this is where the child in today's case went missing. However, after deep diving into this, we have learned that this touristy town we traveled to might not be where we should have been looking. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is a resort city along the east coast of the United States. About 500,000 people are living within the metropolitan area. There's been about a 28% increase in population over the last 8 years. A few interesting facts about Myrtle Beach. It is known as the golf capital of the world due to its abundance of golf courses. With over 100 courses in the area, that boggles my mind. My husband absolutely loves it, but that's a lot of golf courses. With its warm waters and diverse marine life, Myrtle Beach offers excellent opportunities for water activities. Visitors can engage in surfing, paddleboarding, kayaking, parasailing, and even deep-sea fishing to experience the thrill of the ocean. Myrtle Beach, like many other tourist destinations, face some challenges related to crime. The most prevalent crime in the area are property crimes, such as theft, burglary, and vehicle break-ins. Tourists who are unfamiliar with the area can sometimes be targets for opportunistic thieves. Additionally, drug-related offenses and instances of public intoxication occur, particularly during peak tourist season.
About a 100-mile drive straight north, you will find yourself in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And this is where our missing person case starts. Some information on Fayetteville is that it is located in the southeastern part of North Carolina and is a vibrant city with a rich history and diverse attractions. Fayetteville is renowned for its deep military roots. It's home to Fort Bragg, one of the largest military installations in the world. The presence of Fort Bragg has a significant impact on the city's economy and cultural fabric, with many active duty and retired military personnel residing in the area. Fayetteville's downtown area has undergone significant revitalization in recent years. The streets are lined with charming boutiques, art galleries, restaurants, and bars, creating a lively and welcoming atmosphere. The Fayetteville Market House, a National History Landmark, stands as a prominent symbol of the city's history and is located in the heart of downtown. Fayetteville has a higher crime rate compared to the national average, The city experiences various types of crime, including property crimes, violent crimes, and drug-related offenses. It's essential to note that crime rates can vary across different neighborhoods within Fayetteville.
We will get into how and why we are crossing state lines for this one, but first we want to tell you all about Shanta Marie Johnson. Now, there isn't much known about her because this little girl didn't have reporters and investigators asking all the questions. It was before the time of influencers and true crime podcasts that would make sure the public knew her name. So all we know is that Shanta Marie was actually born as Shanta Marie Reed on January 3rd, 1989. She tested positive for cocaine, resulting in her being taken away from her mother and put into foster care. Shanta would eventually be diagnosed with special needs, but the extent or types of that disability is unknown to the public. According to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, babies born to mothers who use cocaine during pregnancy are often prematurely delivered, have low birth weights, and smaller head circumferences, and are shorter in length than babies born to mothers who do not use cocaine. Studies have been conducted to see the long-term effects of drug use while pregnant, but so much more goes into this lifestyle than the drugs, and it is hard to know what action actually causes the effects. However, it has been linked to behavioral problems, language, and memory issues, to name a few. We would never get the chance to know if Shanta had these problems because she went missing when she was only 3 years old. Shanta was in the process of being adopted along with her little brother by her foster parents, Susan Marie Davis Johnson and Willie Johnson. The couple was about 3 months into the proceeding and appeared to have already changed her last name to match theirs and changed the ending of her first name from an E to an A. However, when looking into if this was standard protocol, everything I read stated the name change wouldn't occur until the adoption was finalized. My niece and nephew were adopted out of foster care, and their names were not changed until they legally became my sister's children at that court date. So why was this not the case for Shanta? I don't know if it's because maybe that's just what they went by and that's what the initial report was filed at. It's very unusual. The first year Shanta is missing, everything is Shanta Johnson. And then after that, you find more and more articles with Shanta Reed.
We would all think getting out of the foster care system into a loving, church-going family would be where Shanta's short life would change. However, that would not be the case for this brown-eyed toddler. According to Susan Johnson, the foster/adoptive mother, this is what happened on July 19th, 1992. Susan stated the family of 4 made the approximately 100-mile drive from their home in Fayetteville to Myrtle Beach. On the way, they stopped at a plot of land they owned in the town of Burgaw to put up a for sale sign. Then, the plan was to go to a restaurant for crab legs along a touristy area known as Restaurant Row. Before that, they stopped off at the Briarcliff Mall while Willie and Michael, Shanta's 2-year-old brother, waited in the car. Susan and Shanta went inside a K-Mart department store. Susan would tell authorities that the last time she saw her 3-year-old daughter was when Shanta was looking around in the toy department. She states she turned her back for just a moment and then her little girl vanished. Susan would rush to the customer service counter to report her daughter missing, and then the police would be called and on the scene quickly. The mall was searched, witnesses talked to, and there were a few ponds on the property that dive teams would search for any sign of Shanta. They would come up empty-handed.
Police followed a few leads in those first few days. Shanta's biological mother's family was having a reunion in Myrtle Beach on that particular day. This seems like the perfect start to an investigation. Did someone in the family want custody of their blood relative and take her? Or did the Johnsons make some sort of deal with the biological family to take custody of Shanta? Within 2 weeks, police would say they had no new leads. They searched every crawl space a 3-year-old would fit into at the mall. Nothing was unturned, and there was no trace of Shanta. They tried to think like a toddler. Where would they go? What would they get distracted with? And what would they want to see? But when they exhausted all of that, still nothing. Shanta's biological parents were both checked into. However, they were both in prison serving time in North Carolina and were eliminated immediately. It honestly seems like she vanished into thin air, except we know that can't happen. Someone had to have taken her.
It was 1992, and surveillance videos were not as common as today, but many businesses had them, especially at large malls like the one Shanta went missing from. Authorities watched the tape and saw Susan walk in. However, there was no sign of little Shanta in her arms or walking next to her. Yes, the video isn't the quality of today's video, but there is zero proof Shanta walked in with her mother. Susan's only defense was that the camera did not view from her knees down. So it is possible it just missed the little girl walking next to her. Or did Shanta never make it to Myrtle Beach? Another very strange fact is that from the time Susan walked into the K-Mart, she lost sight of Shanta and made her way to the customer service desk. Only 14 seconds passed. There have been a few times I've lost eyesight of my kids, but I usually walked the next aisle over and called their names, maybe looked under the clothes where rambunctious kids like to hide before I would alert the store. 14 seconds does not seem like a long enough time to walk to the toy section, let alone lose a child, and then make a decision to report it. Needless to say, authorities would scrutinize these parents over the next few weeks, and it seems like the police believed their account of what happened. Well, at least to the media. Were they keeping what they thought quiet while they worked on leads? At first, police would say that they believed a stranger had taken Shanta, but it didn't take long before they added that they didn't think that little girl ever made it to Myrtle Beach, and that she was most likely deceased. There was zero proof that she was ever at K-Mart, no surveillance, no witnesses, and the timeline seems off. This all happened around 3:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday at a busy mall in the middle of the summer in a tourist destination. Someone would have seen her, considering she was reported missing so quickly.
By December 1992, the search for this adorable toddler was classified as inactive. The police didn't have any new leads. They didn't know where to even look next. They still had their suspicions about Susan Johnson, but the lack of any type of evidence made this case challenging to move forward. Shanta's little brother was taken from the Johnsons and returned to state custody. He would eventually find a new family that would adopt him. The state stated this was routine procedure when there was an unexplained disappearance. Susan stated that she went to visit Shanta's biological mother to see if she had any information. She would also tell reporters that she could not conceive children on her own because she was a diabetic, and I quote, and a direct quote from Susan stated, "I always wanted a little girl. My husband wanted a little boy. It was the kind of answer for both of us." After the FBI found no evidence of a kidnapping, they were pulled from the case. And since local police marked it as inactive, the case was passed on to Bill Atkins. He was a retired Marine that joined the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office as a homicide detective. He was a part of the cold case division. He stated he always had a soft spot for Shanta. He would get new motivation to solve this case whenever he looked at that little girl's photo. Less than a year after Shanta disappeared, Bill stated his opinion on the subject, and he believed Shanta never even made it to South Carolina that day. He also believes Shanta is no longer alive, and Bill would end up passing away in 2022 without knowing what happened to the little girl that plagued his thoughts and career for so long.
I could not find one article written about Shanta in 1993 or 1994 in the Myrtle Beach area. It would be my hope that there was work being done behind the scenes, but my heart breaks that this little girl was almost forgotten. until Shanta's biological maternal grandmother spoke out. She told the media that not a day goes by that she doesn't miss her granddaughter and regrets giving up custodial rights of her. You see, Mabel Reed was already raising 2 other grandchildren from her daughter that was dealing with the addiction problem. Mabel couldn't take care of another child, and she couldn't help but think that Shanta would be safe if she had only stayed with her. In one article, there was a comparison between Shanta's disappearance and a white mother who stated her 2 sons were taken by a black man. That case received national attention, while Shanta barely made the local news. It would turn out that the white mother, Susan Smith, was the person actually responsible for her children's death. This is a prime example of why we do what we do. Everyone deserves a chance to have their story told, and everyone deserves justice, including 3-year-old Shanta Marie Johnson. As far as the investigation went, police were searching and things were happening even though they didn't have a clue where Shanta was. They found out that on May 5th, 1992, prior to Shanta going missing, Susan had taken her to the doctor. She got a clean bill of health. Shanta was a thriving 3-year-old. She was even described as an extrovert for her playful and outgoing personality. A short month later, for some reason, Shanta was taken back to the doctor at Duke University Medical Center. Here in her chart, it would be notated that Shanta had physical and mental problems. This included bruises and scratches, and she was experiencing what doctors described as extreme fear. She was no longer that extroverted toddler. She was biting her nails so far down her fingertips bled. Why in the world wasn't this little girl taken then? We all know there's a process. Doctors have to contact social services. Social services have to do their investigation. However, the Johnsons only had these kids for a few months at this point. I would think it would be an open and shut situation. Susan kept canceling appointments to have Shanta reevaluated after that. As we all know, Shanta would disappear before anything was sorted out in relation to these possible abuse allegations. That didn't stop police from pursuing charges after the fact. The good news was Michael, her little brother, was taken away and never given back.
In July of 1995, 3 years after Shanta went missing, Susan Johnson was arrested and charged with child abuse along with a bunch of fraudulent check charges. Sergeant Bill Adkins stated Susan invoked her right to a lawyer and didn't say anything, but sat there with a smirk on her face. I couldn't imagine the emotion that man had to hold back, knowing for the last 3 years he had been dedicating his time to finding this little girl. And one of the people that vowed to protect her was smirking while being arrested for abusing her. I don't know if I could have held back my anger. I do want to notate Willie Johnson, the soon-to-be adopted father, was not charged with his wife. Remember we told you about the land the Johnsons owned in Burgaw, North Carolina? And they supposedly stopped by there to put up a for sale sign on the day that Shanta went missing? Well, authorities searched that 11-acre plot of land with cadaver dogs. The dogs hit on a section of land, and upon further investigation and digging in that spot, police found a piece of plastic and other small items that they could tie back to Shanta. They did not find Shanta's remains, but they do believe that she was buried there at one point and then moved. Authorities also collected soil samples from the area in order to test for bodily fluids. I hate to say this, but that is all we know. There has not been an update made to the public since 1995. After some searching, we found Susan and Willie Johnson are both now deceased, but they lived years after the disappearance of Shanta. Did they tell someone what really happened that day that Shanta went missing? Did she ever make it to South Carolina? Did Susan kill her soon-to-be daughter?
Shanta Marie Johnson, formerly known as Shanta Marie Reed, was 3 years old when she went missing in 1992. That would make her 34 years old at the time of this recording. She is a black female that was 3 feet tall and 44 pounds and had black hair and brown eyes at the time of her disappearance. She was known to be in the areas of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Fayetteville, and Burgaw, North Carolina, and anywhere between. She went missing in a navy t-shirt with Mickey Mouse, white shorts, and white sneakers with blue trim and a rabbit design. If you have any information on Shanta Johnson, please contact the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office at 919-323-1500 or the Horry County Police Department at 843-915-5350.
The weekend of April 13th of this year, Whitney and I both traveled to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to look into Shanta's case. I came from Tampa. Whitney came from Austin. We met up there. It had been so many years since she had went missing. We knew nothing was going to really be the same. The key players don't live in this area. We just really wanted to get a lay of the land, especially around the K-Mart in the mall at Briarcliff.
At this point, we also knew that we don't even know that she made it to Myrtle Beach. I mean, we hoped that she had made it to that Kmart because we would have a starting point to look around. We went to that mall. The Kmart is absolutely not there anymore. Just
shocker.
Yeah, I know. There is a full-blown mall that is also dying currently. There, a lot of empty stores. We walked around it. We looked for just any remnants of what could be the skeleton system of what that Kmart was. Which way was it facing? Where would the doors have been? Kind of a vibe is what we were looking for. We saw the ponds that they searched. We saw the parking lot. We tried to get a lay of the land the best we could.
Exactly. We went into a few of the larger stores that would have possibly been the Kmart, asked about the history of those and actually if they had heard of the case. And it was shocking. A man had owned one of the stores there since the 80s, and he said he never heard about it, which kind of boggles my mind because he was there and owned a store. I mean, I guess that it was a long time ago, but I thought that that was pretty peculiar. Other than that, very, very creepy place. You can definitely tell malls are not happening like they once were. There were various churches inside this mall, and I believe a magic show type of
lots of theaters. So
Yes.
several theater-based stores. And the outside, when you're looking at the outside of the location, there's a drainage pond, but there's also waterways where wet water would be moving because you're along the freaking coastline. It's all wet all the time.
Exactly.
So we talked a lot about what about animal predation? Were there any predators that could have snagged Shanta quickly that are animal predators, not human predators, instead of someone just taking her? Could it have been an alligator? Could it have been she was little? Could it have been a hawk, a really big hawk? What could have possibly happened? I mean, we are racking our brain for theories because we just couldn't believe that a mother walked into a department store with her child, lost her, reported her missing, all within 14 seconds.
Yeah, that's the part that boggles my mind the most. And then the fact that all these child abuse allegations and charges would follow the disappearance of this 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Myrtle Beach, definitely a touristy town. Someone could have been traveling through and opportunistic.
I just find that very hard to believe. I mean, the sheer opportunity of 14 seconds, that's a tight window.
Very tight window. Then you just think, considering Susan reported her missing so quickly, the people that were already shopping there were still there when police arrived. So I'm sure that they were interviewed. They have these witnesses and they're like, did you see a little girl? And no one saw her? How was that possible?
Exactly. With that being said, we do know that, well, we don't know if the items found on the property in Burgaw were ever tested for DNA. We do not know if anything ever came from that. If they even still have that evidence in a box somewhere in a basement, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't even know, which I looked for hours upon hours to find out if Susan was ever convicted of those charges. Could not find that either. It was very frustrating.
Also, when we put in for a FOIA request, the only paperwork we ever got was one sheet of an incident report of when they called it in at K-Mart. It was for a missing child, and there was less than one sentence.
Yeah, I was like, maybe it had demographics filled out slightly and one sentence, and then that is all. And obviously, Michael, her little brother, had been adopted, so there's no way for us to get in contact with him. A lot of the other members of the family are no longer with us. So this is just one that was so frustrating to us, but also she didn't get much attention even back then. We had a few articles in 1992 when it happened, and then 1995 as the mother was being charged. And then that is it.
With our action-oriented advocacy, we always want to try to do something hands-on. Obviously, this one being 3 decades old causes a few problems. Where do we even start? We can't do a foot search because we don't know where to search. And I mean, technically, I would say we did a foot search when we were walking around the parking lot because that's the only information we have based off of this incident report.
Mhm.
So how do we do more? That's what we always want to do is how do we do more? We will be doing mail outs to her neighborhood in Fayetteville. We also are wanting to do some in the Burgaw area. It's a very small town. Small town people stay in small towns. Secrets stay in small towns. It's been 30 years. Maybe someone's ready to talk. Maybe someone remembers seeing them out there, seeing someone do something because there was evidence that perhaps Shanta was on this property at some point.
So we will provide any and all updates if any come to be about Shanta, and look out for Q3's action-oriented advocacy when we travel to New Mexico.
Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $5 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue to shed a light on the forgotten victims, untangle the webs of deceit, and examine the eerie coincidences that make these cases so compelling.
We believe that working together can affect change and create a world where victims are heard, justice is served, and communities are empowered to make a difference, no matter where or who they are.